Please welcome Miguel to the S4 main stage.
Are we going to have an industry to protect? I mean, during these 2 days, I have been, all of you or most of you, even excited with cybersecurity, cyber protecting infrastructures, with different solutions, technological or no solutions to protect the industry. But the question is if we will have industry in the near future or not. I mention this point because while I was preparing the presentation, I found some articles in the media, like this one, by US News and World Report. They refer to making manufacturing, US manufacturing great again, which in my point of view seems that there is not the best moment for the US manufacturing right now. And they refer to a McKinsey report that McKinsey released last November, in which some interesting data make or give sense to my statement. For example, among these data are the fact that the average age of factory equipment in the US has passed from 7 in 1980 to 9 today, 2017. Not only equipment, but the factories themselves has an average age today of 25 years old, and in 1980, this average age was only 16 years old. So McKinsey suggests that maybe $115 billion per year should be necessary to, in some sense, upgrade or balance these differences, or this erosion, this decline. The consequences of the need of this kind of investment are that in the last 10 years, in the last 20 years, from 1997 to last year, the US manufacturing realm has lost 25% of their plants. And to mention the jobs, the loss in jobs reaches the 33%. So maybe we can conclude that security is hardly by far the first problem industry is facing now. Maybe these problems are more related with things like competition, financial constraints, and short-termism. Not only is an issue of the industry, is our own issue, I guess. And for example, this morning also, before the lunch, Jason also gave us I think, a very interesting personal lesson of those problems that are obviously beyond security or cybersecurity. So maybe this scenario explains or could help to explain some of the findings we are to see in the following minutes. But despite being bigger or not, industry and maybe everything needs to be protected. The need for protection is inherent to the human kind, or even especially to countries along the years, along the centuries. An example, I have chosen an example not far from here. I refer to the city in northern Florida, the city of San Agustin, founded by this guy, Pedro Menendez, not my relative, by the way, my countryman, but not my relative. We only share family name and hometown, but as far as I know, it's not my relative. They founded San Agustin, the oldest town in the United States, and a few years later, they realized that they need to protect San Agustin from the British troops, the British soldiers coming from Carolina, and therefore they decided to build the San Marcos, Castillo de San Marcos, the San Marcos fort or fortress, initially with wood and then with stone. To the point that San Marcos, Castillo de San Marcos, today is part of the US National Monument Catalog, and therefore is part of the infrastructures, critical infrastructures in the country. But threats evolved, and today maybe the problem are not the British coming from Carolina. Maybe the problem is everywhere. And therefore nations are trying to protect, again, their assets, their wealth, from the cyber threats we are facing, nations are facing today. The way to do it, one of these ways to get this protection is by public policies. Public policies that we call, I think all of us call, cybersecurity strategies. Usually they are named national cybersecurity strategies. I want to underline the adjective national because we must think twice prior to call our own cybersecurity strategy a national one. Because, why are you saying this? I'm saying this because, for example, if one thinks on India, a country like India, I would ask you if you were comfortable with a country like India having only a national approach to cyber protect their technological, cyber or digital assets, when in India, lots of countries, lots of companies have also interests, industrial interests, technological interests, and so on. So one of my reflections is, please stop calling your national cybersecurity strategies national. In fact, all of them, we have explored several national cybersecurity strategies, and all of them has had an international approach. So why call them national if you are approaching this problem in an international way? In this scenario, in this landscape, we at CCI last year decided to explore how, or both, countries and companies are approaching cybersecurity. And we we are about to release, the book is not released yet, we are about to release this report, European Industrial Cybersecurity Regulatory Landscape, that speaks about Europe, but not only about Europe. We have studied the cybersecurity approaches in Belgium, Germany, Spain, France, Italy, the Netherlands, Portugal, Romania, Turkey, and the UK initially, but we have also included reference to South Africa and also some references to China, to Singapore, and the United States. The reason for doing that, especially in the case of the European countries, why these countries and not other ones, was because we choose those countries in which CCI is present, or simply in which CCI has some good friends that helped us to make the report and the study. Was not an easy task. Was not an easy task because of the number of documents, most of them legislative, legal documents that we have been revising, more than 100, but maybe the main difficulty was languages. My English is not very good, as you can see, but is much better than my Turkish or my Romanian or my Dutch or whatever. So this was one of the difficulties to build the report. The other one was the dynamism of legislation. We started to study and to explore one country, and then a second one, but when we were studying the second country, the legal framework in the first country have changed. So we have problems, difficulties, challenges with this issue too. Anyway, at the end, we have explored three kinds of regulation. Regulation and self-regulation. Regulation by means of cybersecurity strategies, first. Second, by means of CIP, Critical Infrastructure Protection Regulations. And finally, since a corporate point of view, we revised corporate governance codes. How corporations, how listed companies, companies with shares in the share market, are approaching cybersecurity or even industrial cybersecurity. Let's see some results and some findings. With respect to the CS strategies, cybersecurity strategies, I'm going to mention some of the conclusions only, obviously. For example, the first one says that currently the US has no specific formal cybersecurity strategy. The US, in fact, despite being a pioneer in 2003 in the releasing of the first cybersecurity strategy, today has no such a strategy. The thing is not that the country has no cyber strategy, obviously, but there is no document that centralized or that in some sense could be communicated as a central point of information for the US cyber strategy, at least the same way as the rest of the countries can. Maybe, as the slide pointed out, should be a good idea to avoid this "I want my own strategy" presidential syndrome. Why you have one strategy with President Bush, another strategy with President Obama, another strategy with President Trump, and so on. No? Germany, the Netherlands, Turkey, the UK, and again the US are the most veteran countries because they have more than one iteration. They have released more than one cybersecurity strategies of all the domain of countries we have analyzed. So an example for the rest of us, for the rest of these countries. Third conclusion or third finding. Only Spain, the Netherlands, Turkey, and the UK have specific objectives or specific actions targeting directed to board of directors. For example, nor the US, nor Singapore, nor China have specific actions in the wording of their cybersecurity strategies referring to board of directors, which in some sense would explain some other issues that we are going to talk about. ICA cybersecurity, as well as board of directors, seems not to be in the policymakers' agenda, only in all the countries, at least. Only the Netherlands, Romania, Turkey, Singapore, and the US, these countries, the Netherlands, Romania, Turkey, Singapore, and the US, do not include reference to operational technology at all. Insist in the wording of the document, of the official cybersecurity strategy, which is strange, at least. Regarding the CIP regulations we analyzed in all these 13, 14 countries, we found, for example, that a specific regulation rules CIP in every country, except, again, as in the case of the strategy in the United States I have mentioned a couple of minutes ago, except in the Netherlands and the UK. In fact, this is not necessarily have to be a negative issue, but maybe the principle of less regulation and better regulation could perfectly apply. Romania and Turkey, again, I don't know if in the room are people from Romania or Turkey, but they are quite well in this picture, in our report. Romania and Turkey, and again, are among the most veteran countries with respect to the public policies referring to critical infrastructure protection. They are, or they have the oldest strategies, critical infrastructure protection strategies, apart from the US. Italy and Portugal have opted for strictly following EU's CIP directive of 2008. Therefore, the critical sectors are only two: energy and transportation, mega sectors, energy, no, mega sector energy and mega sector transportation. The thing is that the directive released in 2008, 10 years ago, have a homeland point of view, a terrorism point of view. Therefore, the European Union had several difficulties to put all the countries on the same page, because each country was sovereign to rule their homeland policies, and as a consequence, the directive only includes these two sectors, energy and transportation. On the contrary, the rest of countries choose to explore more than these minimum sectors, and most of them have identified 10, 12, even 16, like in the United States, sectors and so on. My reflection here is maybe that it should be good. It should be good to balance, in some sense, all this variety or this disparity of sectors, critical sectors identified for the different in the different countries, because, among other things, because of interdependencies. And in fact, the new directive that I promised at the beginning of my speech that we are not to mention, the new directive is trying to balance this disparity, in fact. But the protection issue is, as I have said a minute ago, is not only an issue of countries, but also of companies. And we can ask ourselves if companies are taking cybersecurity seriously. And let me remember you this photo, this map, not a comprehensive one, not a comprehensive list, but anyway, give an idea that more or less 1 out of 4 countries today have more than one, in fact, have our own CSS, cybersecurity strategy, more or less more than 25%. But what about the companies? What about companies? Let's talk of an example. I suppose most of you know TokTok. TokTok is a telco operator, a British telco operator. They suffered some kind of cyber incidents in 2015, by the way, again in 2016. But in the first incident, the British authorities decided to explore the issue, and they charged a committee in the UK Parliament, the Culture, Media and Sport Committee, to analyze the issue and release a report. This report is very recommendable to read, and it has several interesting messages, but in this case, I have selected this one. Although ultimate responsibility for cybersecurity within a company lies with the CEO, it would be highly unusual for the CEO of a company to have to resign over an attack. This is the opinion of the British parliamentaries, members of British Parliament. Of course, I guess that they don't know that some of us have been registering, documenting, even authoring about cases in the oil and gas, air transport and aeronautics, digital security, financial services, healthcare, public sector, retail, leisure and entertainment, automotive industry, even policy-making industry. We have been, for years, registering, documenting, and authoring about real cases. I choose not to put the names, only the pictures. Real cases of a growing number of CEOs, chairmen of boards of directors, etc., that have to resign due to cyber issues. Not all of them due to cyber attacks or hacking, or in some cases due to mismanagement, investment, IT or technological investment mismanagement. In other cases, just because systems fail and the consequences of these failures have been serious enough to having the heads of the corporations, of the companies resigning and so on. We can summarize these kind of situations with this statement. Digital is not my business. All of them thought that digital was not their business. And one can ask who is next, or in fact, who was next. TokTok was next. Despite not having the need to resign, Ms. Dido Harding, former CEO of the British company TokTok, resigned 1 year ago, more or less, in February 2017. And they said a couple of interesting questions. One of the things she said a couple of interesting questions. First one, sometimes it's okay to admit to your fallibility. And even more, she said the following. We thought we were taking it, cybersecurity, seriously. Our external consultants, our advisors, outside experts, were telling us we were taking it seriously. But now, he recognized, it's patently, we weren't taking it anything like seriously enough. One thing I think I know more keenly than any other British CEO is that every single one of us is underestimating the importance of cybersecurity. This not to mention Mr. Smith, ex-former CEO of Equifax, maybe the last in the list. So it makes sense to explore how companies are self-regulation or regulating. We explore several corporate governance codes in several countries, and we find things like this. Obviously, corporate governance codes are mandatory. If you are a listed company, you must adhere to a corporate governance code. But the funny thing is that the recommendations included in these codes are just these recommendations, are not mandatory. The exception, obviously, is the Sarbanes-Oxley Act in the United States. It's not a set of recommendations, it's a law. You must comply with law. Risk oversight is board of director business, it's board of directors' duty, usually through an audit or a risk committee. We found in this case also that Turkey has what they call an yearly detection, the only one we have this kind of committee, yearly detection of risk committee. It should be good, the other countries, to adopt this kind of early detection committees. Only the Netherlands and South Africa, and South Africa's corporate governance codes make an explicit mention to cyber. If you search all these documents, the only ones are these two, the only ones in which you are going to find the word cyber attack or cybersecurity are ones, by the way, only ones. Ones in the Netherlands code and ones in the South African one are these two. It's amazing because most of these codes has been released or has been upgraded, updated after breaches, for example, like the Target breach, which in the States marked a change of direction in some sense for the corporate world, not in other geographies. And of course, none of these codes mention industrial cybersecurity, as we could suppose a priori. Definitely, it seems that companies are not taking cybersecurity seriously. But there is some hope. This year, Senator Reid, Senator Collins, and Senator Warner introduced a bill in the Congress, in the US Congress, Bill S.536, aiming to bring cybersecurity to board of directors. They didn't try to force board of directors to incorporate or to include directors with cyber background, but they try to make companies aware by means of declaring in their annual corporate governance reports what capabilities have they in their board of directors. The bill has not passed, unfortunately. They have tried the same bill 2 years ago, in 2015, with the same result, unfortunately. But I think it's a change of behavior and is, in some sense, an example of hope for the future. What's more, the text of this bill says specifically that the bill affects information systems understood not only the traditional way, but, and let me read literally, an information system includes industrial control systems such as supervisory control and data acquisition systems, distributed control systems, and programmable logic controllers, which is absolutely novelty in this kind of public policies. And finally, just to give you some positive message, the US manufacturing industry is better than we thought. In November, media said that the situation was not very good, but now, on January the 3rd, the Financial Times has published that US manufacturing grows more than expected in December. Thank you so much.